I'm extremely conflicted arachnophobe and arachnophile Dan Umphin. Welcome to the Doomcast. It's another mailbag this week. At Mattox Meets World tweets, why is there a different Spider-Man in this movie? How many different Spider-Man are there? What happened to Tobey Maguire? Well, that's an excellent question, at Mattox Meets World. 3 questions, actually. 3 very complex questions. And the short answers are money, lots, and Tobey Maguire. First of all, there have been a lot of Spider-Man films. 1.5 trilogies, actually, to be precise. And there's a reason for that. In the early 1990s, James Cameron, the producer of various romance films such as Titanic, The Abyss, and Aliens, wrote a profanity-laden script for a Spider-Man film that was supposed to be produced by Carolco, the same studio that produced Terminator. The script changed the origins of Spider-Man, Electro, and Sandman drastically, even changing some of their names, and actually had a scene where Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson banged on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. Yeah. But after the bankruptcy of both Carolco and Marvel, Marvel did emerge and sold the rights of many of their characters to different studios. They also merged with a toy company. Spider-Man went to Columbia, a division of Sony. So now if another studio wanted to make a X-Men movie or a Spider-Man movie or a Namor movie, they'd have to pay for the rights to be able to do it. Marvel wasn't a studio at the time, and the idea of a comic book company producing their own movies with their own characters, with their own creative team, knowing exactly what they were doing was laughable and could never work. That's why the boom of superhero movies actually occurred, because without that much needed profit that Marvel got from selling the rights to their characters, they would never have sold the rights in the first place, if they didn't need to do so. So we would maybe never have gotten a Spider-Man or an X-Men movie. It at least would have been extremely difficult, and probably not as well produced as the early ones were. It never would have kickstarted Marvel's idea to create a cinematic universe in the way that they have, and DC to try and follow suit. So while the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies were very good for the most part, Spider-Man 2 is still considered one of the greatest superhero films of all time, and one of the top box office grossings. But Spider-Man 3, not so much. Not so much at all. So much so that Sam Raimi became disgusted with the studio's deadlines and decided that he would not be involved with Spider-Man 4, despite trying to rewrite the script several times. So after Spider-Man 3, the studio realized that they could not make a 4th Spider-Man movie with a dancing Tobey Maguire Venom, because that was stupid, but they had to make another film in order to keep the rights. Otherwise, they reverted back to Marvel, and Marvel could make any Spider-Man movie that they wanted. Probably pretty good ones. So they decided that they would reboot, this time starting with Social Network's Andrew Garfield. So Sony again produced an origin story of a character people whose origins everyone is already very familiar with. They introduced brand new characters, a new costume, a fairly dicey plot, and a first pretty good film gave way to a pretty disappointing sequel. But the reason that they did this is, again, all the rights to not just Spider-Man, but any associated Spider-Man character would revert back to Marvel. This is why Sony would rather make a quickly produced film and make sure that they got the money for it and kept the rights, rather than let them go back to Marvel. At least that was precisely the sentiment that was in emails when Sony got hacked. North Korea hacked Sony because of a mediocre Seth Rogen, James Franco film in which they were upset about the portrayal of their fearless leader. It exposed all of the plans for Spider-Man and various films for Sony and ruined a lot of their plans financially. America was pissed, weirdly more pissed than when Russian hackers interfered with our actual election, giving way to a president whose main advisor supports Nazis. Anyway, so Marvel cut a pretty rad deal with Sony in which they're going to cooperate, but Marvel doesn't actually have to pay them for the rights to use their own character. So the new Homecoming film is going to completely eschew telling an actual origin story, but instead produce an entire full-length film that does not suck donkey balls. So Mattox Meets World, that's the story of Spider-Man. That's why there's more than one. That's why. James Cameron and North Korean hackers. A lot of other stuff. Anyway, as for part 2 and 3 of your questions, we'll answer them in the second half. How many Spider-Men are there? A lot! There's a lot. There's a lot of spider characters in Marvel. It's pretty insane. Anyway, we'll see you with part 2, also coming out today. Thank you.